So today we're going to be talking about the movie The Dark Knight from 2008, directed by Christopher Nolan. Now, the first thing I should mention is that this is the only movie that I can think of that I've actually seen not once but twice in a movie theater, and both times it was definitely worth it. So, really, what to think about here is what makes this movie stand out from the rest. Well, I would say that in particular, it was the writing that really made this movie leap off the page as opposed to anything else that I've seen. So, this movie, I mean, it's pretty well known at this point, but the Dark Knight is the movie where the Batman and the Joker come to play, and the Joker played by Heath Ledger. That's actually pretty remarkable because when I first met Heath Ledger, and okay, in terms of the movies I had seen, it was in the movie 10 Things I Hate About You, which isn't quite like The Dark Knight. It's a romantic comedy that's essentially a loose retelling of The Taming of the Shrew, and it has Julia Stiles and Heath Ledger and Joseph Gordon-Levitt, and I guess Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Heath Ledger have another thing in common now. They've both been in Batman movies directed by Christopher Nolan, but in the late '90s when these two came together for that 10 Things I Hate About You movie, they probably weren't planning that. So the movie starts out with a bunch of guys in these clown masks, and right now there's a lot of things going on with clowns and being banned, so it's a little amusing, but it really depends on what day you're seeing this. But anyway, these guys, they're all in this sting operation and trying to gain access to the money, and one by one they end up each killing each other off to have fewer pieces of the pie to cut up between the rest of them. They just rather cut themselves up instead. So it keeps winding down. They keep getting used until the very last breath, and then there's about two of them left, and they're all in these same kinds of masks. None of them really stand out right now. And then this bus smashes in and kills off the last clown that ends up dying at this time. And there's one clown left, and he's still in his mask. And the guy running this bank, starts talking smack about how criminals used to have morals, and which, oh God, morals, really? Last I checked, I think it was more they were breaking code. But okay, the point is that they used to stand for something. And then of course the final clown that takes his mask off and ends up being the Joker, and he only needed a mask so that it wasn't obvious that he was already a goon of sorts. And what does he say? What doesn't kill you makes you stranger. Okay, that's fair. That's not a bad line to go on. And then, of course, he gets the bus driver, the one that rammed in the bus into the bank in the first place. To drive him out straight in a line with the rest of the school buses, and they're just going off to school for the day. Everything's normal and pleasant. A bank just got robbed, a lot of people just got killed. Whatever, doesn't really matter. And that sound means that it's time to talk about Batman. And the suspects that they currently have right now as to who the real Batman is include Abe Lincoln and Bigfoot. As you know, they clearly have a lot of strong leads up for debate right now. And the next part goes into this guy who's pretending to be Batman, and he's going up against the villain from Batman Begins, because this is the second movie in the Christopher Nolan trilogy, and Batman Begins, while it was a pretty great movie, almost got swept under the rug with the arrival of the Dark Knight, and we'll get to more about why that happened. But the guy with the mask on his head, who only now do I realize how much this reminds me of Jason from Friday the 13th Part 2, who basically has a flour bag on his head to cover his mutated face, his deformed face. And this Batman wannabe is trying to sweep up the crime, and he doesn't understand why Batman's pissed at him and knows what he's doing and what he's up to. And I mean, essentially, as Batman goes on to discussion later with Alfred, it's because he wants to make sure he has total domain and control over Batman's name and what Batman does. That's a fair point. It's not a good idea if someone tries to be like you and then they try to start, I don't know, robbing banks or causing mayhem. It kind of tarnishes your good name. Then again, how much of a good name does Batman really have? That's pretty much a debate for the entirety of this film as to whether or not Batman truly has a good legacy or a legacy of a vigilante, which I guess could be good in some circumstances, but it's not always viewed so positively. So then they introduce Harvey Dent as the district attorney, and he's dating Rachel, and it's the same Rachel that Batman was once dating, and I think the big change that happens between Batman Begins and The Dark Knight is that instead of Katie Holmes playing Rachel like she did in Batman Begins, now it's Maggie Gyllenhaal, and I think Maggie brings a certain amount of delicacy and yet fierceness as well. You don't feel like she's a complete damsel in distress as you might with a character like Lois Lane per se in the Superman movies, but she certainly does have a time or two where she does end up being rescued, and then, well, spoiler alert, she doesn't make it in this one, but the thing about those two is that now the district attorney and Rachel are dating, and that makes Batman a bit sore, as he had once asked about marrying her when he was able to retire, but he's not ready for it right now. And while that ends up coming into the play in the end as to as to whether or not she was actually going to follow through with it the entire way. And she at the end didn't feel that he was quite ready to ever retire Batman, even if the rest of the world was. Now, when I first saw this movie, I really hadn't read any of the comic books, and I'll be honest, I still haven't read any of the comic books even as of today. But the introduction of Harvey Dent, who later on we find out is Two Face, was quite a captivating one. And I have to be honest here, I am glad that I didn't read the comic books at the time of this movie release because the revelation of Two Face meant a lot more to me when it was revealed to me for the very first time in this movie. And I feel that I got a lot more out of that reveal because I truly did not know just what just what drove Mr. Harvey Dent anyway. And he always had this coin, and I guess that had its two faces, and well, enough symbolism and allegories and metaphors and things of that nature that he has a two-faced coin and he has two faces to him, and then he literally has two faces to him when his left half of his face gets burned in the oil fires. And I thought that I was able to really capture more of that reveal because it had not been exposed to me before by reading the comics. Now, that being said, I do want to actually dive into the comics now and figure out more about all of these stories and just how Two Face played in everything and what kinds of cases Harvey Dent has had to prosecute and just how far he goes with the mob. But I feel like this movie does a pretty good job with telling you and showing you how far Mr. Harvey Dent goes with the mob. He's pretty gutsy. He's willing to take a number of risks, and he always talks about making his own luck. And I do like how that pays off in the end, with how he makes his own luck because it's always a two-faced coin. And then the one face of the two-faced coin gets burned and scorched, and you can really see he has two faces now, not just two of the same face, but two different faces. And I think it's a nice play on what's going on in the world of Gotham, and I think it's a lot of fun. And I think it's also interesting how the Joker knows to prey on Mr. Harvey Dent and how he can really make Dent mad and cause anarchy for him. And I thought the Joker, causing all of this chaos and how it's just fear, while he's wearing his little red nurse's wig, really really makes it funny. But anyway, the the mob gets found out and they come together with many counts of racketeering and extortion and fraud and robbery and murder and things of that accord. And he ends up getting quite a few criminals in the same place at once, based on the accumulation of the one pot for all of these people to come together. So, as I mentioned before, one thing I really liked about this movie, as opposed to the rest of the movies that I've seen that are related to this kind of action thriller or comic book movie, was the writing. And now that come back and watch this with a different set of eyes, I do see that it was a lot more obvious in its setup than I thought. My 16-year-old self, when I was watching this in the theater for the first and second time, thought this was the most amazing thing I'd ever seen. And it probably was, because at the time of 16, you've seen a lot of movies, but you haven't really given it quite a hard thought, or you really haven't had a lot go on in your life that has really meant more than being outside of high school. So your perspective is going to change a little bit. And while this writing does feel a little more obvious now, there are a lot of movies that don't even try to be subtle. There are most movies out there are just going to be blunt with their writing, and sometimes that's funny, and other times, not really. Now, some of the lines that I did enjoy out of this movie were the "you either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain," and then the talking about how people just want to watch the world burn, and hearing about how there were rubies left in this deserted place that were the size of tangerines. And when I first heard that, I thought, so you'd eat them? Why would you compare to a tangerine? But I guess that was the best visual representation of just how large this diamond could be. And some other small subtle quips were, perhaps you should read the instructions first, even, and then that's not really a zinger or a one-liner or a burn, but just kind of funny how even Batman needs to read the instructions once in a while. He's got that human quality that we all have. And had the exchange between the Batman and the Joker with the "let her go" and very poor choice of words, because the Joker has Rachel dangling off the side of a building, and that's when the Batman says "let her go," and I think, shit, Batman, you have better quips than that. You could at least try, I don't know, something else. There's gotta be another phrase, right? Then again, I can't really think of one, so I can't really judge him too much on this one. And honestly, a lot of the writing that comes into play here is from the Joker. The Joker is really what makes this movie a lot of fun. And he you can tell he's very unhinged, and it's very sad when you think about what's happened after the movie in real life. Heath Ledger's tragic passing, right around the time that this movie was released. Just awful, really. Granted, how choked up do you get over celebrities? That's not really my debate here. But, the timing was awful. The circumstances behind the death were awful. Um, but the only positive thing I can think about that circumstance, because you have to look at the positives of, of crummy events, frankly. There's got to be something you have to really extract and learn from. Was that you could tell whatever Heath Ledger was feeling, whatever he was thinking, really made it into this Dark Knight movie. All of this unhinged nature, this uncanny sense of humor, and some of the lines that really tap into that were "Let's not blow things out of proportion," which spoke to my inner core of loving to make puns about everything. And if you are good at something, you never do it for free. And being a math tutor, I can really relate to that one because it is quite a hard craft to really master and manipulate in order to help others be their best. Some more lines that I really enjoyed from the Joker were madness is like gravity. All it takes is a little push. And you can't savor all the little emotions. Now, that last line is a little more delicate in terms of how the Joker's just savage, and he he's he's awful, frankly. But it's fun watching him being awful, and probably because it's not the real world. And I think that's the big kick as to why I watch a fair amount of these movies, because they're not real. The watching someone else's tragedies is a lot more entertaining and helps you deal with the tragedies in your own world. And yeah, to be fair, I'd rather not deal with the things around me right now. And maybe that's a cop out. But you know what? I admit it, and I'm working on it, and you'll get over it. So while Batman doesn't have as many jokes, and let's be real, if the Joker did not have the most jokes in the room, then he's not doing his job correctly. Batman did have a line or two that I really appreciated. And when the Joker asks, "You want to know how I got these scars?" And he's asked that a few times at this point, Batman quips, "But I know how you got these." And it's hard for me to really imitate Batman's voice throughout this entire movie because he does this obnoxious over the top, "No, but I know how you got these." It sounds like someone's trying to scrape the bottom of the barrel. But anyway, it was nice seeing Batman at least have a good response now and then. Though the Joker still wins in terms of zingers. And I thought my jokes were bad. And then, of course, let's put a smile on that face. And I know the squeakers when I see them. And God, some of these lines are, it's just straight up funny and hilarious. And other lines are funny in that, "Oh, God, I hope I never have to interact with him in real life." And there I go again saying, it's a good thing it's not real life. But I digress. And the other thing about these lines is that they really move the film forward. They are funny, even though they're not so funny at the threat of making the movie less serious. The movie is still relatively grim and dark and intense, and the humor is a good complement. Imagine having a very nice steak dinner with that good salad. The steak is the intense part of your meal, while the salad is a good complement and helps you capture the rest of your nutrition. And in this case, the the one-liners and the zingers and the Joker's presence in general really makes for a good complement to this steak dinner of a meal. And I would say this is quite the steak dinner of a meal. And a few things to note. The other people that are in this movie, Gordon, Ramirez, all the other agents that work with Gordon, Harvey Dent and Gordon have this bit of a tension, bit of a friction between each other, in the fact that Harvey Dent busted a few people with internal affairs, and they're still working in Gordon's unit. And Gordon is just, he doesn't really give a damn, frankly, and he needs all the people he can get. The problem is when those people lead these people that need to be safe into dangerous circumstances, it makes for crummy employees. So a few of these agents, a few of these, well, double agents are come about, and they're actually fairly obvious as to who they are. They keep panning over them too long. They keep saying things like, "Oh, we're gonna keep you safe. We're gonna make sure you're okay." You know, things that are obviously put in there for the sake of looking like they're safe when you know that they're not going to be at the very end. And in terms of who they got bought out by and just what happens. And some of the explosions in this movie, to change the subject a little bit, the explosions in this movie are rather entertaining and, you know, make for solid action movie presence, and especially the one with the hospital. And that's right when the Joker is dressed up as a nurse, and Two-Face is in the hospital bed, and the Joker's talking about how he takes people's plans and turns them right on their head and messes with their little plans and doesn't have a plan of his own. No, 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 no. But his plan ends up being to ruin other people's plans. So I would say that a lack of a plan is a plan in of itself. But who am I to judge? So to sum up this movie, the acting was great. I was swept in, both when I first saw it and when I saw it again in the theaters, and as well as when I rewatched the movie to have a more solid assessment as to how it holds up right now. There isn't any datedness to this movie at all. I really can't think of anything that happens. The Batmobile is awesome as ever. The action scenes that come about are spectacular. The lighting is set up fantastically. There's a scene in Hong Kong where they end up getting this accountant who's good with numbers, and you know, I probably exaggerated a little bit. They don't really make him that stereotypical and over the top, but there is an accountant over in Hong Kong, and the interactions between the mob and Gordon's unit and Batman and the Joker and Harvey Dent, they're all superb. They all work. The cinematography really comes together well. There's good editing that comes about. You get a good atmosphere from the film. Even though it's dark, it's the good kind of dark. It's the believable kind of dark. It matches the grim circumstances that come with the movie. The pacing is great. The writing really helps speed it up, but you don't feel lost. You don't feel like there's incomprehensible pieces. There are enough pieces in this mystery to figure out who's doing what, but you know they're hidden enough that you know a fair amount of the general audience probably will not pick up on them, especially the first time they're watching this. I would say it's not good for just one watch, but it's good for multiple rewatches. It always holds up. It's been worth my time every single time I've watched it. I would say I even liked it more than a Clockwork Orange. I honestly had all the same grades that I had with the Clockwork Orange with this movie, and as I said before, my highest grade I'll be giving is an A. And even though they both had an A and they're both at the same grade, I am still going to pick my favorites in this. And the good news is that it's my list and I can do whatever the hell I want. And The Dark Knight is my new top pick in this list. And there you go. All right. I'll talk to y'all later. Y'all have a great day now. Bye.